Hello, good evening. We are back with the SAP IP Business Talk. And today something is different. You see my background. It's not the normal background. I hope it's also a white wall, but I'm in a hotel in Strasbourg because it's the final module of the MEPLM 2022-2023. And so I have to be in Strasbourg, but I really wanted to do this interview, and so we make it today a little bit more mobile. I hope you can hear me good and you can see also my guest. I have today, we are today in Spain, in Latin America. We come to that. I'm very happy that Andre is with us. And but before he introduces himself, just I would like to let you know that this is a live session, so it would be great when you could give us your comments, your answers, questions, also answers, different answers from the answers we gave in our chat. And I will pick that up and discuss that with Andre when it fits anyhow. And but we can also talk about that after the live show on LinkedIn. So now I'm coming to my guest today. I'm very happy that Andrea Sarmento is here with us. He gives us the opportunity to talk about Hungary and the social media activity there, also some thoughts which we have already prepared, because it's a complex topic and a complex story. And first of all, Andre, tell us a little bit about you, about your background. I have learned that you were also active in tax and compliance questions over the time. So how was your way into this field of IP, and what are you doing, especially when it comes to business development, social media at Hungary?
Thank you so much, Alex, for having me here in this business talk. I'm also very glad that we have so many people from so many different countries and also different backgrounds, different areas in intellectual property. Just to introduce myself, I work in Spain and I live in Spain, but I'm actually from Portugal. I started more or less 10 years ago into working in intellectual property. So I first started working intellectual property in Portugal, and as I worked at the time in a firm that is actually one of our competitors, that is in Portugal, Spain, and Latin America, I moved from the office of Porto, my city, to the office of Madrid. At that time, I was working only with national clients while I was in Portugal, and since I moved to Madrid, so 5 years and a half ago, I started working with international clients. I focus especially on the IP firms more than companies. I work also with companies, but more than that, it's the IP firms in other countries where we are not in that I work with. So my background is law. I did law. I just worked for not for long in other area, which was tax. I worked in one of the big four in tax, but just as a trainee in the beginning of my career for a bit more than 1 year. And I immediately started intellectual property. Of course, intellectual property is not the area that you think of when you're a kid. It's not the dream job, not because it's not an interesting job, because I really like working in this area, but because it's not an area that is usually people don't talk so much about intellectual property. It's more the people that work specifically in our area that talk about intellectual property. A lot of people will talk about trademarks, about patents, but sometimes they don't even know they are talking about intellectual property. So yeah, my background is law. At the beginning, as I told you, I worked with national clients, and with time, I started working with international clients, and especially in business development. So my goal, one of my goals with my job, with the job that I do, is try to establish the best relations possible for our firm in the different countries where we are not in. The countries where we are, it's Brazil, it's Spain first, where our headquarters are, Brazil, Mexico, Argentina, and the US. In Spain, in Argentina, Brazil, and Mexico, we do all the IP services. We do all the prosecution, all the filing, all the litigation that our clients need directly. We have we have colleagues there in those offices in Brazil, Argentina, Mexico, and Spain, in several areas. So we do everything directly. In the US, on the other hand, it's a business development office we have there. So we don't file in the USPTO, so in the American Patent Office. We don't file patents, trademarks, we don't file at all. When we do it, we work with partners that we have there. But yeah, we have an office there. We were actually one of the first firms in Spain to open an office in the US.
Okay. Yeah, thank you very much for that insight. I mean, that gives a good picture about the question, what you're doing and how is the position of Ungria. So I would like to have a first question to you, and we had also already the discussion on LinkedIn about that, and I have nearly every day I'm talking about that with IP experts, and at the end of this week I will talk with my students from the master program about that. It's the question about the relationship between having in-person meetings on the one hand, so after Corona, after COVID, it is again possible and it is used, obviously. And on the other hand, having social media contacts and working with the community on a day-to-day basis. Yeah, so we are still in a big study which we doing around Europe on the consequences of new work for IP experts. And I hear very often that that IP experts, on the one hand, missing these personal meetings. On the other hand, they like the extremely high efficiency of using distance contacts and connections. So, and what we saw is, for example, here, Inter was a big event, big success. 8,000 people were there in Singapore, and they flooded LinkedIn with always the same pictures. Yeah, that was funny. But and maybe not in all of these cases it was a good example how to use social media. But anyway, so we have a certain relationship. So what is your experience? What is the policy from Ungria to deal with this efficiency, reach, on the one hand for the digital development, on the other hand the need of having also personal relationships and meetings?
So yeah, that was a good question. Actually, I can tell you that I have a LinkedIn account I had never noticed, but I thought about this today, and I have a LinkedIn account for more or less 10 years. That surprised me. I thought it was much more recent, but it's I think I created it in 2013. In the beginning, I wasn't that active. Of course, even now there are people who are even much more active than I am. But I am active. I go to LinkedIn every day, and I think answering your first question or the first subject you mentioned, I think that I became more active on LinkedIn, especially during coronavirus. I think every professional in IP had to reinvent, or the professionals in IP that work with several jurisdictions had to reinvent a bit the way they were working and they were making connections. So at that time, I started together with my colleagues to be more active on LinkedIn. One of the things that we started doing was the organizing events, organizing webinars, not as successful as these talks are, because I can see that we have a lot of people attending here, but we had some success in our webinars. What the strategy that we have was to invite people, speakers from different places, from different countries, even different jurisdictions, and we will talk about a specific subject, for example, technology transfer, tech transfer, trademarks. I remember we also did the same for patents in the pharmaceutical area. And we had, I remember, for example, in the technology transfer event we created, we had a person from a university in South Africa, another one from a university in Brazil, and we had a person from a university in the UK. So we used to do that. We tried to, at the time of the coronavirus, to offer some content that would value to people that in our area. We thought that okay, the best option is not, of course, starting to call people or just messaging them without a purpose. So what we started doing was to deliver them quality content, at least in our opinions.
Yeah.
It was quality content.
I mean, that is called content marketing or a content strategy, which means that your law firm, Ungia, should be associated as a source of valuable content for your target group. And what I have heard is not just that you invited people you already know, that you also made contact to potential leads to your target group. And I mean, that is a first thing where many IP experts have difficulties. So that many IP experts say, when I don't know somebody from the real world, I would never ever contact this person, for example, on LinkedIn. But I mean, LinkedIn is dedicated for that. And we have these profiles, so you know a lot about who is asking you for a contact. You can check that, whether this is interesting or not. And this has an enormous efficiency, depending on the situation, that you rush into somebody on a conference and you don't know anything about this person. I mean, that is one aspect. So contacting new people. But in addition, what you say is you organized events which would not be possible, or at least would be extremely expensive when you do that in person, because you invited somebody from South Africa, from Brazil, maybe from Asia, wherever. So it is not necessary that that these people are in the same room, that they travel. So all these inefficiencies go out, and you can really focus on relevant content for your target group. I mean, that is a huge advantage, and I don't see why this advantage should go away with Corona, right?
Yeah, I completely agree with you, Alex. I think that after Corona, now that now that we don't have so many restrictions due to the coronavirus, we are still doing those webinars. Probably they are a bit less frequent, but we are still doing more than before coronavirus. And I would just like to add one thing to the first thing you mentioned. You were talking about inviting people that you are not your contacts or that you don't know for these webinars. I remember a good example, which is the webinar that we organized for pharmaceutical patents, that we specifically invited contacts that people that we didn't have as contacts, that were all focused on chemical engineering, on chemistry, people that work in pharmaceutical companies. So we did a very good job. It wasn't me that did that. So, but my colleague that I had at the time in the marketing, in our marketing, she did a great job by making a list with people in that area. So we would send a personalized. We would send a message, a specific, not a personalized. We would send more or less the same message, but giving interesting content for them. So we weren't sending messages to these people working in the pharmaceutical area, telling them, okay, want to have a meeting with you to talk about intellectual property, to sell you a patent, or so you can register a patent. Or we were saying, okay, we are organizing an event about pharmaceutical patents, because that's what we were doing. And if you are interested, please attend. This is the date. And people would register. And I think it was a very interesting event at that time. About yeah.
And what you're saying is, and I mean that is that. So you do that now more often than you did it before Corona. So first of all, and in many cases, the law firms learned that during Corona. They didn't do it anyhow before Corona. And the reason, one of the reason which I experience is that people, so the target groups, yeah, are more and more used to that, so they expect it really. And especially, so I hear that very often, that people tell me, oh, this is a live event now, I won't have time to go, even when it's the same city, yeah, I won't have time, but I'm happy to know that you do that online, so I can watch it in parallel to make some emails, or I will watch it recorded later on. So it's not black and white, so doing the one thing and don't doing the other thing. It is simply that this is one media channel more, and you can have different kind of messages, different kind of awareness, which you get with that channel. I think it's even better to think in channels, because obviously when people come in person, for example, to your office in Spain, in Madrid, so then that would be a different kind of event. And obviously the guys from Brazil or from even not from around Spain will come for a single event to your office. So the reach is different, the content is different, the awareness is different. It's simply a different channel, right?
Yeah, it is. It is. I think it's, as you said, it's very helpful to. I think LinkedIn. We see it as another tool. Of course, I think most of the people, or at least myself, I prefer to have the contact in person, or the meeting in person. Of course, or at least I think that's important to have at the same time as these LinkedIn events or webinar events. But I think this is, at least nowadays into 2023, I think it's very relevant to have also these interactions, because I think they complement very well the events such as INTA, because we know that we have a lot of people working in our area in intellectual property, and not everybody goes to INTA, and not everybody goes to so many events. So I think it's very important to create a community, to have these events also on LinkedIn. I think both of them are important.
Yeah, exactly. And what you say is we should distinguish that. I mean, meeting people in person has a certain value. It has high costs. It is, so to speak, less efficient. On the other hand, it has a completely different value, and also it is valued by everybody now that you can meet in person. So, for example, I'm in Strasbourg also for a WIPO advanced seminar on technology transfer, which we are organizing at SAPI with WIPO and the French patent office, and people and WIPO took the costs and bring people from around the globe to this technology transfer seminars here. And obviously that has a huge value, that these people can interact with each other in person here in Strasbourg. But it is a once a lifetime or maybe once a year event, and it is not a 24/7 connectivity. It is not a low level, low entry barrier a discussion which I can have with everybody on that planet just on LinkedIn. So it's simply something different, which we should not confuse in terms of, do we want to have the one or the other? It is a different, as you said, instrument, a medium, and it has its advantages, and it has also its disadvantages in when we compare it with a personal meeting.
Yeah, for sure. And I think another advantage of the LinkedIn as a tool is here in Europe, it's easy for us to have meetings even with people in other countries, or at least it's not that difficult, because Europe is not that big. But in my case, in Hungaria's case, we also deal with the firms that are in China or they are in Australia. So it's very difficult or almost impossible to have meetings in person with them. Maybe in INTA, okay, I have meetings with them in INTA, but besides INTA, it's very difficult to have meetings with them, and I need to speak with them on a regular basis or at least every 2 or 3 months. So I think LinkedIn and webinars and presenting articles on LinkedIn. So every interaction possible that we can do, we can offer to the firms that work with us, to the companies that work with us. I think it can be useful, especially to get those clients, partners close to us, even if they are so distant physically.
Yeah, and I mean, it is a completely different way to get information. So when I prepare to meet somebody at INTA, so this is a big thing. Okay, I am prepared, and we have this 20 minutes, this half an hour together. Maybe even we have a dinner together, but it is a high stake issue. And on the other hand, when I follow people who are interesting for me, my clients, for example. So then I will see and learn what these people are doing. So what the company is offering, for example, a new product which comes to the market, things which were very hard simply to know before LinkedIn became that information platform, this professional information platform, completely different to Insta or TikTok or Facebook. And having this information, this professional information about the others, I mean, this is what I'm doing every day. When I get in contact with somebody, first of all, and I don't know this person, but I have a video conference with the person. The first thing is that I open the LinkedIn profile. I just want to know who is that guy and what is the educational background, just to get a better feeling about the person.
Yeah, I think it can be used in a very good way, as you say. Even before the meetings, I noticed that I do that a lot of times. Out of curiosity and even to address better the questions that my colleague will have or client will have. So it's good to know sometimes the background. It's good sometimes to know their experience. It will help you probably addressing or being prepared to be prepared to address the questions that our clients might have. I just wanted to add one thing that I didn't mention, Alex, is the fact that what we try to do also in Hungary is try, I talked about webinars, but we also do a lot of posts about, we publish a lot of things that are going on in the different jurisdictions where we are. I even, before our talk, I was even looking at that, and 2 or 3 of our latest publications were about Argentina and about Brazil. So we address them very frequently, all the issues that all the updates in the IP world, in the IP of Argentina, in the IP of Mexico, in the IP of Brazil, and in the IP of and the IP of Spain, especially those 4 countries. So I think that, as I was telling you, I think it's offering some add value. We are adding some value, I think, to our clients and to the firms that work with us. And
I mean that leads to the fact that you have followers, right? You have people who follow your LinkedIn profile and looking for that kind of professional information. I mean, that makes totally sense that you observe what we others are doing, and you are observed, and you are an object of interest. And you can show your expertise. You can show that you are up to date. I mean, this is exactly my critics, my comment on some of the posts from INTA, where I say, okay, to be honest, where's the value? Where is the news value when I see some guys on the rooftop of the famous hotel and they're having drinks? I mean, but others had, one cocktail picture, but then also a picture from the conference, from a presentation, and then they were describing what they have learned during a presentation at the conference. So what is the message? The message is this guy is not just there to drink cocktails. This person is there to learn. For me as a client, for example, that this person now learns about the global community on IP, the global issues which happen there, which are discussed there, the latest news. And so it's good that this person is there. So I'm happy to pay the fees that this guy is well informed. And so I mean, the Interposts gave a good example that many IP experts have still the difficulties to distinguish between, let's say Facebook, where I'm as a private person, or being on LinkedIn, where I am as a professional. And of course, whatever I'm doing as a professional is interesting also for others, but it should have the right message to them.
Yeah, I completely agree. We have a policy in Hungary of publishing, of making quality publications, so quality posts. So that adds some content. The fact that a colleague of ours published a moment while he's having having drinks with other colleagues, so I respect that, of course, and it's good to network with your colleagues. But here in Hungary we have that policy of in our page sharing things that are also IP related, that are giving some value directly to our clients, especially.
And also these posts about the queer community. The question is also, it's on the one side good, but it should have a message. So for example, we're looking for the best experts. We're looking for the expertise of our lawyers and attorneys and experts, and we don't care about their sexual orientation. So that makes sense. So whatever you communicate, it should have a benefit for the target group. But what you mentioned, I would like to go a little bit more into that topic. So as a global community, IP has the characteristic challenge that we cannot meet on a day-to-day basis around the globe. So we work with all the different national jurisdictions, and IP per se is a very international topic, and we can use these digital tools like these live interview, like webinars, like Teams and Zoom and so on, to be better connected. So what is your approach as an international law firm? How can you use these tools in your business development? So you mentioned your feed, you mentioned your personal contact, your professional personal contacts, you mentioned webinars. Is there a connection between that?
In terms of our presence in different countries, right? At my job doing business development for Hungary, I'm used to being approached by our clients and by our partners, by other firms. For example, I can give a good example from a firm from Germany or a firm from the UK that is more interested in filing sometimes, or in knowing more about the countries that we are in outside Europe, so outside Spain, Argentina, Brazil, and Mexico, than Spain itself. Because I think they, due to the proximity to Spain, sometimes they are more familiar with our jurisdiction, and there are some even some German firms that nowadays have a patent or a trademark attorney from Spain. That can happen. That's not as typical it's not as typical to have in Mexico, in Brazil, or in Argentina, due to the distance, of course. So what I wanted to say is that I am one of the things that I do before my meetings is with these international firms, for example, is to study the updates and to study what has changed for the past few years, not only in Spain, but also in Europe, in the APO, in UIPO, and also Brazil, Argentina, and Mexico. So when we're talking about LinkedIn, we, as I told you, do a lot of, we share a lot of content from these Latin American countries also. So much, as much content or even more about these countries than Spain. We write a lot of, when we write articles about all the countries where we are directly in. Sometimes we write also about countries when we are not directly, because we have clients that work with us indirectly for other countries with our partners. So yeah, I think that we use LinkedIn for all the jurisdictions where we are. So when I say that I work in Hungary, I don't work just for the Spanish jurisdiction. I work for also the Mexican, the Argentinian, and the Brazilian one.
So that leads me to another question, which I have to discuss. So we help, obviously, law firms and experts to become more professional in their LinkedIn activity, and to help them to improve the awareness building and business development. And in these discussions, I have quite often the question, in which language I should communicate on LinkedIn. So, of course, there are different policies how to do so, but de facto, here you have your local language, so Portuguese or Spanish, but that excludes to a certain extent the international community. But it makes it easier for Spanish, for native speakers, to read your message. On the other hand, you have this wonderful translation function. And so, for example, I have some cooperation partners in Poland, and they love to communicate in Polish. And so my knowledge to Polish is close to nil, but obviously it works extremely good that I can understand what they're saying, and then I can answer or comment in English, and they can translate it again back to Polish. So it works quite well. But what is your policy there? How do you behave, and how to Hungary behave there?
Yeah, so Hungary, at this stage, for some time now, it's sharing the content on LinkedIn always in English. I would say that, which is interesting, because some years ago probably that wouldn't be that usual. But I think nowadays, with with the globalization and with in the global community where we live in, English is the language that is the most spoken, at least in our area in intellectual property. And we want, when we share the kind of content that we are sharing, usually it's directed for people in the intellectual property area. So we made that option of sharing the content in English. Sometimes we do share some articles in two versions, for example, in Spanish and in English, or even in Spanish, Portuguese, in English, so 3 versions. So that's how we do it in our page, in LinkedIn page in Hungary. I personally communicate via message on LinkedIn in Portuguese, as I'm Portuguese, in Spanish and in English, in the 3 languages. So when I speak with Portuguese and Brazilians, when I speak with Portuguese people and Brazilian colleagues, I speak in Portuguese. With the Spanish-speaking world, I will speak Spanish, and with the rest, I will speak in English. But yeah, we share our content mainly in English nowadays.
Okay, so I mean, that is, by the way, my impression more and more, that maybe it's my bubble. Okay, it's a big bubble, it's a bubble, that the lingua franca becomes English. And one reason is my assumption. Okay, so this is not an empirical study, but my assumption is that the general availability of these translation tools like Deeply or Google Translate or whatever makes it so much easier to convert your thoughts into English, and then having the broadest possible audience. So you typically don't exclude anybody when you communicate in English, And so also LinkedIn is very good to translate English in all the other languages. So you use English like a kind of non-language. Yeah? So because nobody or only a few are native speakers there, and all the others for all the other cities a foreign language, and so they can translate it back into their language. But we offer also, when we make training videos or webinars or whatever, we simply offer that the audio can be translated in different languages. So you separate the audio from the video and simply say, okay, here's the transcript, do whatever you want with it, and when you want to have it in Japanese, you can have it in Japanese. Maybe it's not the perfect version in Japanese, but it's better than having nothing or don't understanding it.
Do you share any content in German?
No, nearly never. No, we only produce in English. So the IP Business Academy. So also not in French, by the way, which is a offense to the president of my university. But even my PhD candidates, everybody is speaking English here. So because simply with when we do it in French, we would exclude so many people. Simply because of the language barrier, so I don't see the benefit of that, and also my understanding of IP management and IP is that it is a global issue, and we should have as many participants as possible. So, do you work also with that machine translations, or do you translate it on your own? So how are you dealing with this language issue?
That's a very good question, actually, because it's something that we feel nowadays that we sometimes we feel even some pressure nowadays from clients or from these platforms that work in our area to use machine translation. So I would say that we most of the times we don't use machine translation, but there are some specific cases with external translators that we do use machine translation. It's true that in terms of costs for the translation is a better option. We have some doubts internally if we should use it that frequently. But yeah, I think with time we are starting to use more than before that we weren't using at all.
I mean, that depends on the document, right? I mean, one thing is a patent document, for example, itself. Another thing is a communication, a discussion, or a white paper or whatever. I mean, there are different levels of documents which you are exchanging. And so I would assume that the question, I mean, when I'm writing an expert witness report, obviously I'm start with a machine translation, but then I give it to a native speaker and check whether this is everything clear what I try to say here. I mean, it depends on the document and on the importance of the document, right?
Yeah, that's true, of course. And we even have some clients that tell us directly that they don't want the machine translation. We also have that. And yeah, I agree with you that it depends, of course, of the document we are talking about. There are some documents that it's not even a possibility, and then there are others that we feel that we can use the machine translation. So yeah, it's something that is also improving. So I would say that probably with time, the firms are going to use more the machine translation. I just wanted to add one thing that I remembered from the previous subject that we were talking about, Alex. We were talking about the language. We are still talking about the language. And I remembered actually one interesting thing that we have already done in the past. While we were doing a webinar, I remember it was a webinar about patents in Brazil, and two of our speakers were not that comfortable speaking in English. So we actually were able, and I think it worked very well, to do kind of a voiceover at the same time. So you could activate during the event the language in Portuguese or in English. So you could hear our two colleagues either speaking in Portuguese, if you would prefer to that language, or in English. So that's possible. I've already done at least one webinar where we did that. And it worked very well. I think, I don't know, I'm not sure if it's on YouTube, but I will confirm and I will tell you.
No, this is a feature which we are also offering, and more tools can do that. And to my knowledge, also Microsoft is offering that more and more for Teams and also for Zoom. You have plugins for that. And to be honest, my French is not that good. And it's simply a fact. And so when we have meetings here from our administration board, so I'm attending via Zoom, and I'm using a plugin that I get this French discussion always translated into English, and not to German, because most tools are better to translate whatever in English. And so my English is good enough that I can follow then the discussion. And I think that is we also offer that opportunity that our content can be translated on with a voiceover, with a tool, and also that works. Meanwhile, that works even in live for events, for example, for administration board meetings. And basically it is much better than your limited language knowledge. And simply it is not given. I mean, you are very lucky that you speak these 3 languages and you working also in these 3 language areas.
Yeah.
But quite often the ability to say exactly what is important in a different language is maybe a big issue. And so these tools can help a lot, and simply to make the message, first of all, available to everybody.
Yeah, and these colleagues specifically had a very good technical knowledge about pharmaceutical area. So it would be a pity if you would lose information due to the communication or the language they were communicating in. So we chose to do that. We chose that they would speak in their mother tongue, but at least the people who are listening would understand everything that our speakers were talking about.
Exactly. And let us assume you are in a country, in a smaller country with a smaller population, like we work with Onsagers in Norway, for example, and Norway has not so many Norwegian speakers, and but you have a big topic and you want to spread it around. So then you need a language which is simply also understood by third parties, and typically this is English. I mean, in most countries that works quite well. Maybe in some Asian countries, but then you use the machines to help you.
Yeah, that's it. I think that what we try to do and what we usually is try to connect the people in our network the best way possible. And that's why we use the English, because I think it's a universal language, as we were talking about. So
and you don't have the feeling that you that because you're using English, you're losing anyhow your community or business development opportunities. I would assume so. What you tell me.
Yes, I don't think we lose, because so as a company we do we share our content, as I told you, in English, but then my colleagues and I specifically via message, via email, via our meetings, we also speak in Spanish or Portuguese.
Yeah, of course.
So this is like the language that we start with, but then we when you go to our clients, when you go to our partners, we do speak other languages.
Okay, so thank you very much. That was very insightful. We started with the question of personal meetings, and using LinkedIn or digital tools. We talked about this global connectivity, and finally we switched to the language question, which is also heavily discussed in the IP community. So Andre, thank you very much. We will prepare a recording and also a blog post, and we will also make a training video for the audience. Andre, thank you very much for being with us this afternoon, and we coming back to you as the audience. Also, we are available later on LinkedIn when you have any questions, and the IP Business Talks come back to you with the next guest in next week. So thank you very much, Andre. Have a good time.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Alex. Bye.
Bye-bye.